Welcome to the Michigan Small Business Development Center's presentation on Small Business Big Threat, your next level understanding of cybersecurity and cyber risks. My name is John Hine. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Trivalent Group, an IT and cloud services provider based in Grand Rapids, and the primary developer of this presentation. Security is a little more complicated than the days of these relics. I'm eager to share this information with you in the hope that it will inspire you to action in your organization and help you become a safer cyber citizen. Let's get started. Our agenda for today, and what I hope is your take-home pay, will be first we're going to review the main concepts around cybersecurity. Hopefully you have some foundational knowledge, and if you don't, we'll cover that here in the presentation as well. Along the way, we're going to look at some real-world scenarios and real-life examples of these concepts, things that can and will or could happen. Throughout the presentation, we're also going to take a moment to see if this is starting to stick, and we're going to test your knowledge. And then finally, we're going to review the key points and establish your marching orders. Yes, you'll have some to-dos towards being a safe cyber citizen. So if you remember nothing else from this presentation and only have one takeaway, I hope it's this: security is not convenient. Now, I coined this phrase years ago when life was actually much simpler, and as was our work. We didn't have to have passwords that were so long. We didn't have to lock our computers all the time. We didn't have to be so suspicious. We could be more trusting. It was easier just to be and to work. Well, now it's different. And it's very important that you understand that this is your new normal. The inconvenience, this baseline of suspicion, is the new normal for being a safer cyber citizen. In the spirit of a cliche, which I confess, I have this for you as well. If you implement every measure in this presentation, you could still be impacted. There's no guarantees. If you neglect to implement what's in this presentation, I can all but guarantee that you'll be impacted. What I'm going to show you today is really more about risk mitigation, because honestly, risk elimination isn't even practical. For example, antivirus software doesn't ensure that you won't get a virus. It simply reduces the risk that you will. The only way to truly avoid these issues is to not have employees and to really not conduct business that involves technology. Not really practical in today's society. So for a little levity, let's look at how some people view technology use.
I will visit suspicious websites.
Gambling.
Pornography. BitTorrents.
It's a free country.
If I want to hog all the company bandwidth by visiting dangerous websites, I'll do it.
Let freedom ring.
FreeStreamingMovies.com. FreeLicenseCodes.com.
FreeNuclearCodes.com. www.I'mAboutToGetArrested.com.
I just ended up on a watch list.gov.
ExpensiveLawsuit.com/we're all going to prison.
The web is so fun.
Okay, so hopefully you got some laughs, and I did too. My personal favorite's the guy in the suit. So the thing is, some of those people are not all that separated from some reality. So, but I thought it was funny to share that. So as we go through the presentation, I want to introduce you to some distinguished guests. These are the personas that will be joining us along the way, and we can hopefully learn some things from them as we go through today's session. So first I want to introduce Ashley. And she is a black hat hacker, which is actually as bad as it sounds. And she says that most small businesses think they're too small to be a target and don't protect themselves. If you did not take the assessment, thank you. Your business will be on my radar to hack. Does not sound like a nice person. Then we have Marco. He's a coffee shop owner. And he says that businesses like mine offer free Wi-Fi to customers, and I recently learned how risky that can be. The assessment is a great tool to learn how to keep your network secure. Okay, makes sense. And then we have Jeff, and he's a hardware manufacturer, and he says as we grow, we continue to implement new systems and procedures to protect our business and customers from cyber attacks. I hope the experiences shared throughout the assessment help you protect your business. And then we have Sally, and she's a plumber. And she says, we may only have 5 employees, but that didn't stop the hackers from targeting us. In the assessment, I shared several best practices I learned after our database was hacked. So by the way, Have you taken the assessment? If you haven't, I would encourage you to go to smallbizbigthreat.com and do just that. Now, with the exception of Ashley, these people are just like you. They're small business owners. They're simply looking to build a life, build their business. They don't want to focus on how suspicious they have to be and the threats that are out there. They want to simply live their life. But things are different now, and let's look at that. A question I often get is, why is cybersecurity such an issue now? And I honestly kind of distill it down to three main things. There's some real game changers out there. If you look at our society, we are so interwoven into technology capability. It's a huge part of our personal and professional lives, and there's benefits to that. It's not a bad thing, but there's also risks that go along with those benefits. So first, let's look at the fact that we're always connected, are we not? I mean, most of us don't even listen to our music offline anymore. So we're always connected, and this increases the windows of opportunity for something to happen. We also now have a very IT or technology-centric business and society. And so if you kind of think about what you do in your daily life and in your work, can you come up with anything that does not involve some reliance on technology? I did it. Brushing my teeth was the only thing I could come up with. And then finally, we kind of have this whole thing where technology's become far more usable. You could also say convenient, which we now know security is not convenient. So as it's become more usable, many users of technology today really aren't even at a level where security concerns are a risk or a concern of theirs. And so this leads to greater vulnerability, a lot of times attributable to human error. When you add these things up, these contribute to what some statistics show is a 660% increase in cyber attacks the last 4 years. A staggering number for sure. And this isn't just a local, state, or national issue. This is a global problem. As you can see from the graph, we in the United States are indeed the top target in the world. We're also one of the biggest sources of cyber attacks as well. So it kind of goes both ways in that regard. But if you look around the graph, you can see where a number of countries are involved, and some are very small, but they might have an industry or something about their economy or location that make them a target. All the same, it's an incredible amount of impact worldwide. To kind of show that visually, I'm presenting you a map, and it's mesmerizing, it's stunning, it's revealing, it's all those things. What you're looking at is a real-time tracking of cyber attack, cyber threat activity. Now, the stunning thing here is that this isn't even all of it. This is simply the stuff that's fairly easy and straightforward to track. There's more. I should also note that what you're seeing here is not all government sponsored. In other words, the United States did not just declare cyber war on the Ukraine, although it looks like that. What you're seeing here are a combination of cyber warfare. You're seeing a combination of hacks. You're seeing tests. You're seeing what are called honeypot systems that are out there to attract hacking activity. You're seeing systems across the globe that have been commandeered to participate in a hack. And it's stunning to watch. And there's really no other way to say it. I've, in the building of this presentation, left this map up for quite a bit of time and just watched and continue to be amazed at what I see. But it does give you some overall scope of just what we're dealing with. And if you look in this left corner, you can see that just through this system with limited tracking, there were nearly 1.8 million attacks observed yesterday. Fascinating. So you see all those attacks, you might wonder, well, what's the cost impact of this? I mean, what do breaches cost per year in general? So if we were on a game show, we might say it's as much as a new car. If only. If only. In actuality, it's 100 billion with a B dollar impact in the United States and 300 billion globally. Again, staggering figures when you think about it. And this is not all just because of the large companies that we've read about in the press, your Targets and your Home Depots. This is definitely impacting small business like you. So if you want to separate yourself and say, well, I'm only a 1% impact in this, that's still $100,000. That's real money. If we look at some basic statistics on attacks, more can be revealed. As an example, roughly 81% of data breaches occur from some form of hacking. Not a surprise. Roughly 69% of data breaches involve the use of malware, and we'll talk more about malware here shortly. Roughly 98% of data breaches originate from an external agent or person, so from outside arm's length. And that, of course, then leaves roughly 2% that occur right in plain sight. Unnerving, to say the least. Now, I certainly talked to you about this being a global problem, and it is. I want to kind of show you at the local or national level what the scope of some of these threats are. And this is a limited scope, and what you're looking at is borrowed from the Better Business Bureau's website, abbreviated as the BBB, and they have a fantastic feature called a scam tracker. And a scam tracker is where you can search, and as you can see on the left side of the scam type, I've identified just those cyber attack type of scams: spyware, adware, malware, phishing, identity theft, tech support, and it's just from January 1st of 2015 to October 21st. And what you can see here is a bit of a heat map nationwide of the threats that were reported. I have to note, this is the ones that were reported. The BBB has no big brother technology that is tracking anything. This is concerned and affected people and business owners that have reported these scams. So what you're seeing here, and to me, the story this tells, is it's a fairly democratic issue. I mean, there are some higher concentrations where there's bigger populations, but overall, from sea to shining sea, threats exist. And so don't think, even if you're in a rural area, even if we have a few less threats in the heat map here in Michigan, don't think that we're safe. Well, here's a visit from Jeff, and he said, I'm glad I remembered to search the BBB website before I opened the email I was suspicious of. That's a great point, Jeff. So we're going to talk more about that, being suspicious. We're going to talk more about how to identify phishing emails. But when in doubt, this BBB website is a terrific place to search to see if that's a known scam. So I've mentioned a few times about being suspicious, and unfortunately I need to encourage you, I need to implore you to become suspicious. Your online experience must start from that point. Assume something is not legit, and if you're in doubt at all, any niggling whatsoever, don't open that email, don't click that link, don't go to that website. In essence, look before you leap. If you start from a position of suspicion, you'll be less likely to make what could be a very costly mistake. I'm going to now step you through some key fundamentals around the ways and types of cyber attacks that occur. And the first one to start with is actually social engineering, which may not sound overly techy to begin with. And so I'm going to show you how those two correlate. So social engineering, one name, many forms. What is social engineering? By definition, it's the use of manipulation using psychology to coerce one into giving up information. Okay, that's a mouthful. Let's look at it in examples. First, that you've heard the most of probably is phishing. Phishing with a PH. And this is essentially those false or fake emails, chats, or websites designed to impersonate real systems with the goal of capturing your sensitive data. Next, we have baiting, and I promise we're not going with a natural resources theme here, but we have baiting. And this involves dangling something that you want to entice you to take an action that the criminal desires. Could be entry into a contest, as an example. Then we have impersonation, or sometimes called quid pro quo. And this is a request for your information in exchange for some compensation. Sometimes you'll get offers to participate in a survey, and you have to provide sensitive information in that survey. Oftentimes that's a scam. And then we have pretexting. And pretexting is the human equivalent of phishing. And this is where someone actually in person impersonates an authority figure, or someone you trust to gain access to your login information. It's the oldest one in the book. So here's a visit from Marco, and he says that phishing got me last week. It was a message from my supplier asking me to update my password. Well, as Marco learned the hard way, it wasn't actually an email from his supplier. Oh no. And sure enough, here's Ashley, and she's admitting that that was her. People forget that hackers have jobs too, easy places to practice. So while Ashley's visiting us, let me hit on that for a moment. Oftentimes people have this picture of a hacker sitting in a darkened apartment with 5 computer screens in a black hoodie in the dark, hacking people. And that's rarely how it works. Hackers need to make money generally, unless they're really, really good at the criminal aspect. So they have jobs. You maybe know one. And the workplace is where they sometimes will practice. So as we'll talk about down the road in the presentation, being safe at work as well as safe at home is critical. The next pillar we're going to talk about is overall protection best practices. And I call this the umbrella topic because honestly, the whole presentation can be about this. But we're going to focus on just a few key tactics and take all of this information and try and distill it down to where it's just bite-sized for you. So here's what I'm going to call some minimum best practices, table stakes, if you will. First, back up your data. Back it up every day and get it off-site. And when I say get it off-site, I think you should get off-site automatically. I am not a fan personally of you copying information to a hard drive or storage device and then have to manually disconnect it and take it off-site. With the technology and the affordability of that technology today, off-site data being accomplished automatically is very easy to do, and it should be done. Back up your data every day. Ensure that your network is configured properly. If you potentially leave one checkbox unchecked that should be checked from a security standpoint, you may have left yourself very vulnerable. Don't assume and don't cut corners here. Make sure that you have a professional or a trusted resource that really knows what they're doing to configure your network. Immunize. Make sure you have things like antivirus and anti-malware software, and not only that, make sure that it's configured to update frequently. It's not uncommon that several times a week that software will auto update. And then finally, with your credentials, don't make it easy. Long passwords, complex passwords, non-intuitive usernames, these are things that will help make it harder to compromise your data. Yes, it's a little less convenient. I promise you we talk about malware, and that's really the main form of software threat that we see nowadays is malware. And so to break it down a little bit for you, here's kind of what malware is and is not. Malware is software, essentially, and it's designed to let a hacker gain control over a computer or device. It could be control over your data. In this past year, many people were affected by various forms of ransomware, where their data was held hostage unless the client paid a ransom to get it unlocked. Nasty stuff. Malware is also usually installed by a virus, not the kind you catch from another person, but a computer virus, or by connecting to a network that is infected or unsecured, like sometimes a public Wi-Fi connection. Malware may not act like a virus that might erase or corrupt files. Sometimes it's subtle. And then finally, malware can send information about your computer or device anytime it's connected. Remember, the always connected society creates greater windows of opportunity. So what's in a policy anyways? A policy, you say? Well, that's nothing to do with technology. Actually, it is. As small business owners, you really need to have a formal policy that your employees sign, that your partner signs, that you sign, that provide guidelines for your technology usage using your company's technology. This is really your legal protection, your coverage, should something unlawful happen with your company's technology, even at the hands of a rogue employee. So I implore you to have this, and we'll have a link to this on the smallbizbigthreat.com website, but this is a screenshot of a sample policy that you can download from the SANS Institute and basically put your name in and use it. It should go in your employee handbook. If you don't have an employee handbook, just at least have this policy in place so that you are covered. Now here's a visit from Marco, and he's saying, look, I'm a 5-employee coffee shop. Do I really need this? And I say emphatically, yes. Yes, you do. Okay, so let's play a little game called Myth or Fact. Myth or fact, users of the Apple Mac platform are impervious to cyber attacks. Okay, iPhone people or MacBook people, I know who you are. You're out there, you're dead set in this belief. You feel like you're impervious. Nothing can happen. What do you think? It's a myth. It's a myth. So while it's true that the Apple platform has a far fewer issues related to malware, viruses, and associated threats, no platform is totally impervious to the ever-growing number of threats. So don't be fooled. And as I promised you, we're going to do some testing along the way. So let's take a quick quiz. And our first question is, why is cybersecurity such a concern these days? Well, you might default to A if you're a bit cynical. There's more rotten people in society today. Or we're connected, or being a hacker is cool. What do you think? Yeah, it's B, right? We're always connected. Our always-on society has us connected to the world in one form or another. Okay, let's do another one. What might indicate your computer has malware on it? Is it because your browser takes you to websites that you didn't type the address for, has a mind of its own? Maybe you're getting pop-up messages that you weren't expecting. What do you think? Yeah, it's all of the above, all the above. Malware infiltrates your system in such a way that your system begins to perform erratically or more slowly, more times than not. Okay, so passwords. I mentioned that we would talk about this more, and this is obviously one of the most important tactics in protecting your system access, your data, and being a safe cyber citizen. So first of all, we need to look at length. The longer the better. And nowadays, really, we're looking at a minimum of 16 characters. And it really wasn't so long ago that we thought 8 was just outstanding. 8 was, I'm not going to say impenetrable, but is outstanding. And now, some even recommend 25. So a question I get asked a lot is, how am I supposed to remember a 16 or 25 character password? And I get it. It's a long thing to remember, and of course I'm going to encourage you to not write it down anywhere, especially on a sticky note on your monitor, right? So what we often recommend is that you use a passphrase and then borrow letters and numbers from that passphrase to build your password, and that gives you something that you can remember. So as an example, off the top of my head, I could say, it's always cloudy on Wednesdays in 2015. I could then borrow the capital I from it's, and instead of an A from always, do an @ sign, and take these different characters and substitute some special characters, as you'll see in a moment, and some numbers, to build a string of letters and numbers and characters that looks by itself pretty random. But if I look at that and I know that matches my passphrase, that's how I can remember it. So as I indicated, there needs to be some complexity. Substituting just generic letters with symbols creates additional difficulties in having that password compromised. And this isn't about just people guessing your password. Password compromise is now oftentimes a result of mathematical iterations and technology. Hackers do not use themselves sitting in front of a keyboard trying to guess your password. Password cracks are done through software automation and blunt force attempts to compromise a password. Your passwords need to be unique. So if you do a great job and follow this advice and you create this wonderful 16-character complex password, don't then go and use that same password for everything you have a login for. Be one and done, or at least vary it as much as possible. And then safekeeping. As I said, don't write it down on a sticky note. There's a wonderful set of software tools out there, sometimes called password managers, password wallets, password safes. These are encrypted software programs that you can oftentimes run on your smartphone as well as your computer, and they are the best way to keep your passwords. And then finally, we're talking about sharing. And ideally, don't share your password. But if you must, the best way to do that is to create a temporary password and share that temporary password, and then expire or delete that password once the person uses it. Or worst case, text it to their phone. Don't email it, don't write it down and give it to them. Okay, so we're going to move out of the technology realm again a little bit and talk about physical security. And I want to introduce you to our friend Larry, who had a pretty tough day at work.
Hi, Larry. I seem to have left my ID badge at home, so I can't get into the office. Do you think you could let me in?
Sure. You can just follow me in.
Thanks for letting me in, Larry. Oh no, I've left my laptop in the car. Can I borrow your ID card quickly?
I guess that's okay.
Thanks. I'll be right back. Jackpot. Let's see what we got here. An unsecured laptop and some cash. An unlocked screen. Profit looks good. I think I might buy some shares. What else? Password, confidential data. Ooh, some car keys. Nice. Okay, time to make masking. Identify Larry. Access granted. Alert. Service shut down. Thanks, Larry. Alert. Service shut down.
Oh dear.
Okay, so those are some very high-end special effects, right? But we can sympathize with our friend Larry here in the way that he was taken advantage of. But physical security is a key element of our overall security strategy. And here's why I say that. Looking at the graphic, you can see how cybersecurity, which we're talking about mainly today, and the people, that's you and us, are really interrelated with the notion of physical security. So if physical security is not handled well, as we saw with our poor friend Larry, it can undermine our cybersecurity efforts, no matter how good they are. Our physical security informs our cybersecurity ideas. So in other words, we've learned to lock our doors and windows at home. This notion and this muscle memory, if you will, needs to inform and kind of motivate and inspire our cybersecurity. And as I said, it can improve cybersecurity, and it really is part of our overall security strategy. So if we neglect physical, it will negatively impact cyber. Now, a question that does come up from time to time is, what about when there's an ex-employee? Maybe that's going to be poor Larry now after what happened to him. So there's certainly some best practices that you want to follow in this case. First and foremost, I would recommend that you change all passwords, not just the employee that's no longer there or anyone that they may have known or been close to. Change all passwords because you really don't know what they have access to. I'd recommend that you disable all user accounts of the departed employee. Make sure that you are thinking about not just their main network login to your system, but they might have separate application logins to applications that you use. Maybe there's a cloud-based application with its own login. Really think through where all the credentials might be and that you disable them. And I would just really advise that you get professional help if this person was either your IT person or your most IT savvy person. You really may not have a full understanding of what all they know. So I recommend that you get some outside help to take care of that. Okay, so we've kind of covered the physical realm. Now let's talk about what one of the biggest impacts or game changers have been, and that's really the power and usability within mobile technology. And really, I think that nothing has impacted the risk windows more than mobile computing. So in other words, risk no longer has boundaries, right? Because we can do so much from our phones and from our tablets. So let's examine how to be a safe mobile citizen as well as being a safe cyber citizen. So certainly, right, we have now, most of us, smartphones, and we have tablets, and we have laptops, so that we almost always have access to our applications and our data and the functionality that we want. So we're doing things like emailing, and we're accessing data, we're running apps, we're maybe connecting to our workplace, our work network. So what does this mean? It means that we need to have, first of all, some encryption or some security over the usage and transactions that we're using that technology for. We need to have good old-fashioned discretion in what data we are using from where and what we're posting on social networks. We need to have, as I've said a couple times now, malware protection on our mobile devices to ensure that they are not compromised. We need to have awareness, time and place. Is this network that I'm connected to the right time and place to be doing the kind of usage that I'm thinking about doing? It may not be. Authentication, to reinforce the message, we need to make sure that you have to authenticate to devices. If you have a smartphone, if you were to hand it to me right now, and I can just hit the button to turn it on, if I can start using it, that's a problem. Most smartphones now require a PIN number or a password or a fingerprint scan. If you're not doing that, do it right now while you're listening to me. Take care of that. Now, speaking of mobile technology, another question that comes up pretty frequently is, which platform is more secure? My iPhones or my Droids? Sorry, Droid people, from about a 3-to-1 ratio, more breaches and more issues occur and threats are created for the Android platform. Now, having said that, that's because it's a more open platform, which gives you some more customization capabilities, and you can actually do more with that platform. But that convenience comes at a cost, because we now know security is not convenient. So speaking of public Wi-Fi, time and place, let's look at that. If you're using a public Wi-Fi network, I would really recommend that you don't do anything of value when you're using your technology. In other words, don't pay your bills, don't manage your investments, don't update your healthcare information, don't do something with the Social Security Administration while you're using a public Wi-Fi connection. Just keep it basic, okay? Next, personal protection. I'm not talking about guns, I'm talking about firewalls. And most systems, certainly at the laptop level, Windows systems, have a local or personal firewall feature. Make sure that's turned on so that someone cannot just easily connect to your device. And then stay secure, and if at all possible, use a VPN. Sorry, we love our acronyms in technology. I'm calling virtual private network for any business connectivity needs while using a public Wi-Fi. Oh, here's a visit from Ashley, and she says that public Wi-Fi hotspots are target-rich environments. Then an evil laugh. Okay, now if we're honest with ourselves, we know that a lot of times on our mobile technology, what are we doing? We're doing social media. Social media. But you know what? It's not just for personal use anymore. It's a primary business marketing tool for many small business owners. So let's learn how to use it securely. The same rules apply for credentials, and this is now the second or third time that you've probably heard this in this presentation, that you want to make sure that you have those long and complex passwords. You need to continue to let that rule the day. Ensure that those passwords are not easy, and not intuitive to crack. Discretion. You just heard it. Only share what's necessary. This is especially true if you're sharing or using or promoting regarding your business. Only share what's necessary. Less is sometimes more. Remember, these apps are on your phone. A lot of times, there's a huge amount of control over your company's reputation because of social media access that's just a few finger presses away of an app on your phone. And I would encourage you to update and review your social media content frequently. The more frequently you do it, the more readily you'll notice if something does not look right. Now, the other thing that we do a lot of online is we buy stuff. In some cases, we sell stuff too. What you're looking at right here is called retail in real time. And this is not certainly every online merchant, and this is just, as you can see from the logos, representative of just certain key vendors. But what it shows you is that even though online buying is behind the pace of kind of the traditional offline or brick and mortar, this is about a $10,000 a second deal. So there's a lot of money at play here when you're talking about buying and selling online. So in order to stay safe, or as safe as possible doing that, let's look at buying first. First, look for the lock. Most browsers will put a padlock in either the address window or the lower status bar when you're in a secure session. In conjunction with that, the address of a secure website should always be HTTPS, as in secure. Look for that as well. And then also make sure that you know that that website is trusted. And if you don't know, do some research and find out. If you're selling, encrypt, encrypt, encrypt. Make sure that your transactions are conducted securely. If you're not sure, get help. Use proven technology, and I would really encourage you to get direction from either your bank or your credit card provider or your e-commerce merchant to get this nailed down. And then finally, only store securely. Most of you probably should not be storing credit card information, certainly not writing it down. So sensitive information needs to be stored securely and encrypted as well. Well, here's a visit from Sally, and she said that I've actually called the company before I decided to do online business with them and check the BBB. And this is such a great point. The BBB is a national organization. If you want to do online business on a website that you've never heard of and they're based in, say, New Jersey, you can still look up that company name. Make sure they have a good rating. Call the company. Make sure they seem legit, that they can handle your questions. Vet them in some commonsensical ways before you give them their money online. So while we're talking about buying and selling, you may or may not have known that recently, as in October 1st, the EMV standards went into effect. Now, EMV stands for EuroPay, MasterCard, Visa. These are the credit card standards that changed. Many of you probably received a new credit card that had a chip in it over the summer or early in the third quarter. So I'm not making this up. As you buy things on with credit card now, you will actually dip your chip into updated readers that many stores have. Beware, this may, not necessarily will, but it may add a second or two to the time it takes you to check out. So as we're in the holiday shopping season right now, as of this recording, maybe it's just a little bit slower in line if people are checking out in a more secure way. Now, is this all about security? Not 100%. It's also about who gets the blame if something goes wrong. And as you can see below, this is really about shifting the liability from the merchant to the carrier and vice versa, interestingly enough. Okay, let's go with myth or fact again. I'm going to take the drastic measure. I am not on the internet, so I'm safe. Okay, well, it's a bit extreme, but seems logical, right? That too is a myth. So while statistically safer, certainly it lowers your risk, you're still at risk from an internal malice or data can be copied to a USB drive. So you're not 100% safe. Okay, some of you may do business internationally, and let's just touch on that briefly as we look at what the impacts are there. So first and foremost, know the law. Okay, the laws of a given country may dictate how you do business involving technology, data storage, and security. Be sure you understand the details. Only use secure VPNs, again, as virtual private network for remote access. Given the proliferation of attacks both originating and targeting foreign countries, you need to understand the technology infrastructure is not as robust in all countries. Sometimes it's great, but sometimes it's not. And that can make you more vulnerable or susceptible to an attack. And when you return stateside, I really advise that you connect to a secure network and kind of go through some verification that your devices are not infected or compromised in any way before you resume connecting to your production or your company's network. All right, so certainly the primary mission is no breaches, right? But if that primary mission fails, then what? So you've been compromised immediately, and obviously you want to disconnect your systems and kind of lock things down. Think of it as trying to prevent the spread of disease. So disconnect your systems. Don't turn them off because you may lose the ability to track some forensic information, to track what happened. But at least disconnect everything. And then certainly as fast as possible, but certainly within 24 hours, you have, in some cases, a legal obligation for sure to inform your affected parties, whether it's your customers, investors, stakeholders, or community. And then it goes without saying that as soon as possible, resolve your issues and then resume operations. And I'm going to emphasize that as soon as possible, because there's some long-term implications of that taking too long. And we'll come to that again. A question for you is this. Do you know what an hour of downtime costs you? If you don't, you should. You should. And here's a visit from Sally saying that even though I'm a small plumbing business, I learned it cost me $500 an hour to be down. Okay, so that's a $4,000 day. That's a, $20,000 week. That's real money. That's real money. So be aware of this because it may guide your investment and your decision making towards your security practice. So certainly some large companies with lots of resources have been affected, your Targets and Cities and Yahoos and Zappos, and they have all of these resources. But as I've told you before, you as small business owners are also targets. In some cases, you're viewed as easier to crack, so you're lower hanging fruit, so to speak. But what can we learn, okay, if you've been breached? First of all, own it. It happened, acknowledge it, accept responsibility for it, and move towards resolution and fix it as fast as you can. Obviously, fix it right. Prevent it. It can't happen again. The statistics do not favor your business's survival otherwise. That's right, I'll say it again. The statistics do not favor your business's survival otherwise, and I'll give you some data in just a moment. Okay, quiz time. Let's see if it's starting to stick. What are some indicators that you're using a secure browser session? Maybe you have a lock in your browser address field. Maybe you have the HTTPS. Maybe you have your monitor turned so no one else can see your screen. Yeah, you're right, it's the first two, D, A and B. Another one, what is a task that you should not do while using public Wi-Fi? Pay your bills, mess around on Facebook. What did we just learn? If you guessed A, you would guess correct. Avoid conducting business on a public Wi-Fi network that may involve sensitive personal or financial information. Okay, as promised, let's walk through some scenarios. First of all, malware. One of the key indicators with malware is that you may get pop-up messages that indicate that you've been infected. And you have to be careful because these messages look very legitimate. A lot of times they are from an application that's called something like Anti-Spyware Pro 10.0, whatever it might be. It's going to seem very legitimate. But if you did not remember installing that application, you may have a problem. Malware will oftentimes slow down your system. And if you're under the age of 40 and you're watching this, you have no idea what that is in that picture. That's actually an old school modem. That's how we used to connect to a network back in the day. If your browser seems to have a mind of its own and it's going places that you didn't necessarily tell it to go, that's another indicator. And then finally, if you get pop-up messages, but you get them at sites that you didn't go to, or you get them when you're not on the site that you're used to seeing them, that's also an indicator. Phishing. We've talked about phishing a little bit now, and really that's the most common type of threat that we see. And what you're looking at here is an example of a real phishing email that a colleague of mine received, and they work at a Fortune 200 company, a large company with a dedicated security team, all kinds of resources, and this still came in. So let's break it down. Remember, be suspicious. What are the tells? First of all, subject and sender. Anytime you get a message that's talking about your password, I want you to have your flags up. Second, these generic email addresses, like in this case, sysadmin@itsecuritygroup.com. Okay, it sounds relevant, but it's just too generic. It's just too generic. So even if it looks legit, kind of really hover over it and scrutinize it. Oftentimes there's a supposed authority. In this case, it's an act of Congress. The real red flag comes when it's doing this and it's asking for your password. And in this case, it's asking for multiple passwords. It's very rare, if almost never, that a legitimate company will ask for your password. And then finally, you need to be very, very scrutinizing on spelling and grammar. Nitpick. Is there a hyphen where there shouldn't be one? Is that spelled wrong? Legitimate companies will very rarely let a communication go out that has got grammatical or spelling errors in it. Our physical security scenario is this, and we're going to look at an in-office and out-of-office situation. In the office, we all need to take bio breaks from time to time. I want you to think lock before loo. Lock that computer. Make sure that it is not unattended. You might need to even lock your office door. Maybe you don't have the ability to really secure everything that you'd like to, so lock your office door. Out of the office, think of the coffee shop. It only takes a second for your technology to get stolen or compromised. So don't even take your eyes off it for a second. Secure it at all times. And understand that in your home, your technology are what criminals consider high-value targets. Your phones, your tablets, your laptops, anything else. High-value targets. Oh, here's another visit from Ashley. And she says, I had a heyday with someone's computer that they left unlocked at the office last week. Remember, hackers have jobs too. Our social media scenario is an example from 2014. This is in Europe. So an entertainment company had to unfortunately lay off almost 200 employees. And in the scope of doing that, one of the employees that they laid off had access and the knowledge to gain control of their social media accounts. And they basically really, really negatively affected that company's reputation online. And it went viral. Huge, huge black eye for that company. Now, one of the more important scenarios I want you to really drill into is this Wi-Fi public access one. And this is a real situation that I was involved in personally at a school district. And it was really pretty staggering. So a 16-year-old student using their phone was able to bring down an entire school district network. And they did it by launching what's called a denial of service attack, which is basically a flood of traffic such that the network cannot handle it all, and it brings it down. So basically this student was able to connect to a Wi-Fi. They were able to get, with some experience, what's called an IP address on the school network. And don't get hung up about the address, just know that it's an address on the network. They were able to go to a hacker website. There's plenty, trust me. They entered in this address, they pressed enter, and they walked away. Within 90 seconds, they had taken this district down. And I was there watching it, and I happened to be wearing a suit that day, and this kid thought I was an FBI agent. And you would have thought that that would have made him nervous or scared. Not at all. He was proud and boastful in what he had accomplished. So understand that the mentality behind some hacking activity goes far beyond financial or otherwise motivational gains. So here's some realities for small business such as yourselves. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller said there's only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be. Well, obviously we want to stay on the latter side of that as long as possible. So as I told you, there's motivations beyond money oftentimes, and I want to make you aware of a term called hacktivism. This is the act of hacking or breaking into a computer system, but it's politically or socially motivated. There's purpose behind it. And the individual that performs this is a hacktivist. This will oftentimes fuel their efforts far greater than money will. Statistics show that you are the target. Here's why. Since 2011, so between 2011 and 2014, cyber attacks aimed at small companies have doubled from 18 to 36%. That's going to continue. Trust me. And here's why I've been so emphatic about why it's important to avoid issues and then recover from issues quickly. 60% of the companies that have been breached never recover long term, oftentimes within 6 months. So it's hugely important for you to make sure that you recover. So what should you do now? There's resources available to help you expand your knowledge. The smallbizbigthreat.com website has lots of great information that the SBDC has worked hard to bring to you that will be very helpful. So further your education. Next, assess your situation. Use that education, that knowledge, get outside help if you need to understand where you're at and where you need to be, and then resolve that gap, improve your situation. I hope you found this information understandable and informative. Cybersecurity is an expansive topic and constantly changing. Always keep learning. Use this as your starting point. Best of success to you this year and the years ahead.